Have you ever heard of the dumb ox? It sounds like an insult, doesn't it? But this was the nickname given to one of the most brilliant minds in history, a man whose quiet presence hid a revolutionary intellect. His teacher, the great Albertus Magnus, saw through the silence. When other students mocked his quiet, hefty classmate, Albert declared, "You call him the dumb ox, but I tell you, this ox will one day bellow so loud his roar will fill the world." That man was Thomas Aquinas, and his teacher's prophecy came true in a way no one could have imagined. This is the story of the saint who dared to unite faith and reason, changing Western thought forever. Our story begins not in a dusty library, but in a castle in Rocca Secca, Italy, around the year 1225. Thomas was born into a powerful, noble family, the Counts of Aquino. His path was set, a prestigious, comfortable life as the abbot of the nearby monastery of Monte Cassino. It was a career of power, wealth, and influence. But Thomas had a different calling. He was drawn to a new, radical group of friars known as the Dominicans. Unlike the established Benedictines, the Dominicans were mendicants. They owned nothing, traveled on foot, and survived by begging. They were dedicated to study and preaching the truth. For a young nobleman, choosing this life was like a modern-day billionaire's son announcing he's joining a nomadic commune. It was a scandal. His family was horrified. They saw it as a betrayal of his class and a waste of his potential. So they decided to take matters into their own hands. As Thomas traveled to join the Dominicans, his own brothers, who were knights in the emperor's army, ambushed him on the road. They kidnapped him and locked him away in the family castle for over a year. They tried everything to break his will. They tore the Dominican habit from his back. They argued, they pleaded, they threatened. But Thomas remained steadfast. Desperate, his brothers resorted to a final, despicable temptation. One night, they sent a beautifully adorned prostitute into his locked room, hoping to seduce him and shatter his vow of chastity. What happened next became legendary. Thomas, seeing her enter, grabbed a burning log from the fireplace. He brandished the fiery torch, chasing the terrified woman out of his room, and then slammed the door shut. He used the glowing end of the log to burn a cross into the wooden door, a permanent symbol of his commitment. It said that at that moment, 2 angels appeared to him in a dream, girding him with a mystical cord of chastity, a gift of purity that would stay with him for the rest of his life. After this dramatic failure, his family finally realized they couldn't break him. With a little help from his mother, who arranged a fake escape to save the family's honor, Thomas was finally free. His journey as a scholar could now truly begin. He traveled first to Cologne in Germany to study under the man who had foreseen his greatness, Albert the Great. Albert was a towering figure himself, a master of philosophy, theology, and the natural sciences. He recognized Thomas's genius immediately. From Cologne, Thomas went to the intellectual heart of the medieval world, the University of Paris. This was a time of great intellectual turmoil. The works of the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, long lost to Western Europe, were being rediscovered through Arabic translations, and Aristotle was a problem. He was a pagan who used pure reason and observation to understand the world, from biology to ethics, without any reference to the Christian God. Many in the church saw his philosophy as a dangerous threat to faith. They feared that embracing reason would lead people away from divine revelation. You either had faith or you had reason. You couldn't have both. But Thomas saw it differently. He believed that truth could not contradict truth. If God created the world and also gave humanity the gift of reason, then studying the created world through reason must ultimately lead us back to the Creator. He didn't see Aristotle as an enemy, but as a guide. He embarked on a monumental task: to synthesize Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology. He wanted to show that faith and reason were not enemies, but 2 wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth. He argued that we could learn much about the world through our senses and our intellect, but that some truths, like the nature of the Trinity, could only be known through God's revelation. Faith completes reason. It doesn't destroy it. This project culminated in his magnum opus, the Summa Theologia, or Summary of Theology. It's a massive, brilliantly organized work that addresses virtually every question imaginable about God, humanity, and the universe. The Summa is structured as a series of questions. For each question, Thomas first presents the objections, the best arguments against his own position. He gives his opponents a fair hearing. Then, he presents his own view, often quoting scripture or church fathers. Finally, he systematically answers each of the initial objections one by one. It's an incredible display of intellectual honesty and logical rigor. He wasn't afraid of hard questions. He welcomed them, believing that wrestling with doubt was the path to a stronger, more certain faith. This work became the foundational text for Catholic theology for centuries, a towering cathedral of thought built from logic and faith. But Thomas wasn't just an abstract intellectual. His deep thought was fueled by an even deeper love for God. This is most beautifully seen in his devotion to the Eucharist. In 1264, Pope Urban IV established the new feast of Corpus Christi to celebrate the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. He needed hymns and prayers for this new feast, and he commissioned the two greatest minds of the day to write them, Thomas Aquinas and the Franciscan scholar Saint Bonaventure. Legend has it that they both went to present their work to the Pope. Bonaventure went first and began to read his beautiful composition. As he read, Thomas stood by, listening. When Bonaventure finished, it was Thomas's turn. But before he could begin, Bonaventure walked over, saw the hymn Thomas had written, and immediately tore his own manuscript to pieces, declaring it unworthy to be compared with what Thomas had created. The hymn Thomas wrote was the Pange Lingua Gloriosi, a masterpiece of theology and poetry that is still sung in churches around the world today, especially during Holy Week. The final two stanzas, known as the Tantum Ergo, are a profound expression of faith in the Eucharist, where faith for all defects supplying, where the feeble senses fail. For Thomas, the highest truths of reason bowed before the mystery of faith. For nearly 2 decades, Thomas wrote and taught relentlessly, producing millions of words. His output was simply staggering. Then one day, it all stopped. On December 6, 1273, while celebrating Mass in Naples, Thomas experienced something profound. He was lifted into a mystical ecstasy. After this, he never wrote another word. He put down his pen and left the great Summa Theologia unfinished. His concerned friend and secretary, Reginald of Piperno, urged him to continue. "Master," he said, "why have you stopped this great work?" Thomas's reply was shocking. He looked at the stacks of books and manuscripts that contained his life's work, the greatest intellectual achievement of the Middle Ages, and said simply, "Reginald, I can write no more. All that I have written seems like straw to me, compared to what I have seen and what has been revealed to me." After his vision, the most complex arguments and brilliant proofs paled in comparison to the direct experience of God. The dumb ox had seen the reality to which all his words had been pointing, and it left him silent. A few months later, in 1274, Thomas was traveling to the Council of Lyon when he fell ill. He stopped at a Cistercian monastery in Fossa Nova, not far from his childhood home. As he lay dying, the humble friar who had once been a nobleman accepted his final journey. He passed away at the age of just 49. So what is the legacy of this quiet giant? The writer G.K. Chesterton, in his wonderful biography of Aquinas, said that Thomas' great achievement was to let the light of Aristotle and Greek reason into the closed room of medieval thought. He didn't just open a window, he knocked down a wall, showing that we don't have to choose between science and God, between our minds and our souls. He showed that all truth, whether discovered in a lab or revealed in Scripture, ultimately comes from the same source. The dumb ox of Roccasecca did indeed let out a roar of reason in service of faith, and its echo continues to resonate through the centuries, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of God are one and the same journey. Thanks for watching. If you found this story inspiring, please hit the like button and subscribe for more explorations into history, faith, and the figures who shaped our world. See you next time.